I'm joined now by Global Affairs analyst Michael Bociurkiw, who joins us from Sydney in Canada via Skype. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Just to pick up on the issues in the States and the high numbers of cases there and the deaths, in spite of there being world-leading healthcare. What's the lesson that's learnt from the way the pandemic was handled?
Sure. Well, good to be with you again, Lauren. Well, what we're saying is two things, really. A pathetic lack of leadership from the Trump White House. If Mr. Trump had spent less time on the golf course and more time in the White House Situation Room, I think the country would be in much better shape. But to be fair, he did inherit a broken system. And what I mean by that, the hospital system is it's been compared to a low-cost air carrier where you have 100% efficiency but zero surge capacity, zero ability to deal with mass casualty events. Hence, there are not only a lack of beds but lack of qualified staff to deal with this unprecedented emergency. But so, look, I spoke to a member of President-elect Biden's coronavirus team the other day. He described the pandemic as a forest fire looking for human wood to burn. He said it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
I mean, the inequalities clearly were part of the picture that we've seen across the world with the pandemic. So obviously, there was already inequality before the pandemic, but what sort of things have been brought into focus during these times?
Sure. Well, look, on the one hand, Covid-19 was pretty much the first time in modern history where all of humanity experienced the same thing at exactly the same time. I don't think that's ever happened before, but that's where the similarities end. And what I mean by that is, for example, right now as we speak, Lauren, we have 250 million people on a death march towards starvation, according to the World Food Program. And that is made very more difficult to deal with during a pandemic for a variety of reasons, including the crushing of diplomacy. A lot of starvation, as you know, happens because of conflicts. Diplomats can't go there to give it the treatment they deserve. And then the other thing, I researched a lot about something called the digital divide. That existed pre-pandemic. And for example, right now, as we speak in Africa, there are 346 million youth not connected to the internet. So how are they supposed to do distance learning, or how are their families supposed to work from home? It's just not possible. And by the way, that digital divide exists very badly right here in North America as well.
And what about the prospects for the future? I mean, when the pandemic first struck, people talked about, you know, we can't go back to the world as it was and same as usual after this. But with the vaccines being rolled out, is there a danger that the systems will simply be left as they are and you know, that people are trying to bring back the old normality?
Yeah, well, you remember right after the South Asian tsunami, which, by the way, happened around this time of year many years ago, there was a lot of talk then of build back better. But I think a lot of leaders just sleptwalked their way through that. But I think people are more serious about that, especially, for example, when it comes to the environment. City centres will not go back to the way they once were, very congested, high pollution. There will be a different way of work. But also, I think when it comes to things like travel, because the airline industry, let's face it, is one of the biggest polluters on the planet. But a lot of people now are reevaluating when they travel, how they travel. And a lot of business travel, I think, will go to the way you and I are talking right now, virtually. So that will give the planet a bit of a break. And I think Mother Nature is taking a long-awaited welcome gasp from all of this.
Michael Bociurkiw, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
My pleasure. Happy New Year.
There's much more ahead on the Al Jazeera News Hour, including Italy's coronavirus nightmare. The first Western country forced to lock down grapples with its pandemic response. And getting ready for an Olympics in lockdown, we hear from the Taekwondo silver medalist on his year during the pandemic. That's coming up with Gemma in sport.